Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants from different time zones across the globe. Deccan School of Pharmacy cordially welcomes you all for our Deccan's International Webinar Series entitled Novel Approaches in Therapeutic Targeting in Prevention of Breast Cancer Associated with Age of Pregnancy. I, Dr. Razmatunisa Begum, Professor, Department of Pharmacology, extend a warm welcome to all the eminent speakers, intellectuals, and heads that have come together on this platform just to make sure that right message and right knowledge is delivered to the right audience. I'm happy to inform you that around 1,050 participants within India and abroad have been registered, including participants from countries like US, UK, Canada, UAE, KSA, Ethiopia, and Indonesia. If your actions inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. This quote best describes our beloved principal, Professor Dr. Syed Abdul Aziz Basha, chairperson of today's webinar and principal, Deccan School of Pharmacy. Sir is always a guiding spirit behind our every innovative program. I welcome you, sir. My dear friends, I find immense pleasure in welcoming a dynamic personality who is not only a great leader but also Mrs. India International, Professor Renu Yadav, Honorable Principal, IITM, Department of Pharmacy, IES University, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. Professor Renu Yadav is a passionate leader with strong willpower, taking bigger challenges with her passion and truly believes in hard work and dedication. Her versatility and sweet nature attracts many. Her motivational ability makes every impossible task into possible. I welcome you, ma'am, to this webinar.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's a true pleasure for me to welcome our today's resource person, Dr. Neha Tabassum, PharmD, PhD, and a research scientist, Cancer Genetics Group, Imperial College of London, United Kingdom. She is an August alumnus of Deccan School of Pharmacy and a young woman scientist advancing her career in cancer therapy. Dr. Neha is here with us to share her research findings appropriating to the breast cancer awareness program and highlighting the issues of novel target approach. I also welcome the enriched gathering of all the participants varying from faculty members, research scholars, students, and other delegates across the world to this international webinar series. Now, let me give a brief overview of our college. Deccan School of Pharmacy was established in the year 1997 by Darussalam Educational Trust and managed by Barrister Asaduddin Owaisi, Member of Parliament, Hyderabad, Telangana, and Managing Director Mr. Akbaruddin Owaisi, Member of Legislative Assembly, Government of Telangana. Our college offers 4-year B.Pharm degree course, 6-year PharmD, 3-year PharmD postbaccalaureate, and 2-year PharmD and 2-year M.Pharm course in pharmaceutics and pharmaceutical analysis. We have served over 2.5 decades with excellent academic records and research activities. The organizing committee of International Webinar Series will glad to present a short video about our college. As the month October is regarded as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we have taken this opportunity to educate people how pregnancy at different ages can affect your chances of developing breast cancer and finding novel ways in therapeutic targeting in prevention of breast cancer after the pregnancy. Let us collectively enrich ourselves with the talk on advanced approaches, which will be followed by question and answer session. If you have any queries during the presentation, please type them in the chat box. We will discuss that during the interactive session. A participation certificate will be sent to your registered emails on responding to the feedback form. The link will be shared at the end of the session. As we begin, let us invoke the blessings of Almighty by reciting few verses from the Holy Quran. I call upon Neha Fatima, student of PharmD 4th year, to recite few verses with English translation.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العظيم. English translation. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed shaitan. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious, and the most beneficial. By the sun and the morning and its blazing glory, and the night when it covers with darkness. Your Lord has not forsaken you, nor hated you, nor is he displeased. And indeed, the hereafter will be far better for you than the present life of this world. And verily, your Lord will give you so that you will be satisfied and you will be well pleased. Did he not find you an orphan and give you a refuge? And he found you lost, misguided of your way, and then he guided you? And he found you poor, then he enriched you and made you self-sufficient. Therefore, treat not the orphan with oppression, and repulse not the beggar, and proclaim the grace of your Lord. Thank you, Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Neha. It's my absolute pleasure to invite our dear principal, Professor Dr. Syed Abdulaziz, chairperson of today's webinar, to deliver the opening remarks.
Good morning. Warm welcome to our virtual webinar series platform. The portals from the web portals of Deccan School of Pharmacy. Today's elite presenters, Professor Dr. Renu Yadav, Principal, IITM Department of Pharmacy, IES University Bhopal, Scientific Research Fellow, Dr. Neha Tabassum, Cancer Genetics Group, Department of Surgery and Cancer, Imperial College London. Dear colleagues, dear principals, professors, and teaching fraternity, scientists, research scholars, and students from India and abroad, warm welcome. Every nation and every individual is in raising the bars of human quality life, and well, this is seen in the present pandemic COVID-19, where the nations have gone poorer, but none compromised on the individual and public health issues. Today, the advanced differential diagnostic scans, tests, innovative tools and procedures, genomic sequencing analytics, scan the disease states, all of which are now pouring in with minutest differential infinitesimal value additions that are prompting us to go in for the novel therapeutic approaches in designing and in delivering of precise, targeted, safe, efficacious, and affordable drugs, and more appropriately, the personal therapeutic approaches. Right into the context of today's webinar, entitled Novel Approaches in Therapeutic Targeting in Prevention of Breast Cancer Associated with Age of Pregnancy. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the mutational landscapes in normal healthy breasts during and with the age of pregnancy bring in variants and carry the mutant clones, signaling the pathways for the onset of inflammatory breast cancer risk before childbirth. And such somatic mutations and their detections are of concern. And also, there are different genetic analysis that give variation in women, be it primigravate or multigravate or in nulliparous breasts. The driver somatic mutations getting accumulated, clone expansion detections, and the therapeutic approaches in the prevention and treatments are the shots of this day and call for advanced, personalized, specific driver gene therapy concepts and medicinal approaches to infuse in you the energies, the new ideas, and to lead the ways in discussions and activities of today's session. We have Professor Dr. Renu Yadav, an eminent scientist, academician, and a beauty queen of Bhopal, who stood for Mrs. India International. And above all her traits, she is an advocate of women's rights and upliftment, and are doing, especially in bringing awareness of cancer in women on societal platforms, are laudable. And secondly, Dr. Neha Tabassum, who will be introduced to you shortly, is an august alumnus of Deccan, reaching to the pinnacles of heights in the research at a very young age. If you do remember of the National Elocution Competition conducted by Indian Pharmaceutical Congress at Hyderabad in the year 2014, this is the very girl who won the hearts by her eloquent styles and adequate presentations, for which she was awarded one of the best speakers. With this, I wish the sessions are fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your encouraging and inspirational words. I now call upon Mrs. Zainab Mehbeen Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmacology, to introduce our introductory speaker, Professor Reenu Yadav.
Good morning, everyone. With profound happiness, I'm introducing our today's introductory guest speaker, Professor Dr. Reenu Yadav, a leading scientist and academician working in healthcare and pharmaceutical field from last 13 years. Currently, she is working as principal at IITM Department of Pharmacy, IES University, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh, India. She also serves as an advisor scientist at SCAN Research Lab, Madhya Pradesh, and former dean at Bhabha University, Madhya Pradesh. She is appointed as a young scientist mentor by Controlled Release Society, United States of America. Her areas of emphasis are herbal formulations, evaluations and development, phytochemistry and pharmacological screening of herbals. She also holds a respectable position in many professional bodies, academic council, and board of studies in universities. Dr. Yadav is an author of 4 books and more than 35 research articles. She is a mentor and international speaker as well, invited in more than 10 countries worldwide for lectures. She was felicitated with many travel grants and research grants from Indian Council of Medical Research, New Delhi, Madhya Pradesh Council of Science and Technology, CSIR, New Delhi, Department of Science and Technology, New Delhi, Government of India and HR Ministry. She guided postgraduates and PhD research scholars for their research projects. Many awards and honors in the field of research and education are on her name. In 2019, she received awards Mrs. India International 2019, titles Beauty with Brain, India Star Icon Award, Woman Icon Award, Global Brilliance Award, Social Activist of the Year 2019, Dubai. In 2018, she was awarded Best Teacher and Academician Award. In 2015, recipient of Young Scientist Award in Dubai. In 2014, Women Achiever Award in Beijing, China. She also got recognitions for her scientific presentations in Paris, Thailand, United States of America, France, China, Dubai, and Singapore. Dr. Reenu is successfully conducting Women Health Empowerment campaign across Madhya Pradesh. She is completely dedicated and committed towards girl child education, gender equality, and their health empowerment. She is also creating awareness about spread of coronavirus and immunity boosting during lockdown by videos, articles, and webinars. Dr. Yadav, with her attractive qualities and magnifying persona, impress others and serves as a role model. Above all, she proves women are the largest pool of talent in this world. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Reenu Yadav and request her to deliver the presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Hamaira Fatima, for the beautiful, lovely introduction. And with this, I firstly want to congratulate Deccan School of Pharmacy for successfully organizing that international webinar series, that is Deccan's International Webinar Series. Congratulations to all of the team. And first of all, I would like to dedicate my sincere thanks to Deccan School of Pharmacy for having me here as a introductory speaker. And my hearty thanks to Principal Professor Dr. Syed Abdul Aziz Ji, Principal Deccan School of Pharmacy, who invited me as an introductory speaker. Thank you so much, sir. So, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening uh, to all those participants who joined us from all over the world. And a very good morning to our resource person for today, Dr. Neha Tabassum. I think Neha ma'am is much more specialized than me in this field. So I would like to give more time to Neha ma'am so that she can give a more in-depth knowledge about this particular topic. As my specialization is in herbal formulation. I'm not much specialized in the cancer, but I always organize such kind of cancer awareness camps for the females who are underprivileged, who lives in the slum area, so that they can understand the how they can get breast cancer and what are the different treatment strategies for this. So I always organize that kind of camps for the women who are underprivileged, and that's why I like to speak on the cancer awareness all the times. But my approach is always a basic and introductory. So that's why I think that Dr. Saeed Abdul sir invited me as an introductory speaker. So I'll start with a very basic of the breast cancer so that many young women among us can be benefited by this awareness program or this webinar. So first of all, I'll divide my whole presentation or whole talk into two parts, in which in first I'll discuss a general overview of the breast cancer. In my second part, I'll discuss some novel approaches or some general approaches for the treatment of the breast cancer. So I hope the next 25 minutes would be fruitful for you, all of us. So first of all, happy Breast Cancer Awareness Month to all of you. We all know that October is the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I believe and I think and I take it always as opportunity to increase the attention and support for the early detection of the treatment of the breast cancer. So this October month is very special and near to my heart always. So I'll start with the basic definition of the breast cancer. So what is breast cancer? Firstly, cancer starts when the cells begins to grow out of control, and cell is nearly any part of the body can become cancer and can spread to the other parts of the body. And breast cancer is a malignant tumor basically that starts to the cells of the breast. So malignant tumor is the group of cancerous cells that can grow into surrounding tissues or spread to distinct areas of the body. So one question always arises in our mind that is it a disease of women or it can happen to men also? So I'll answer this question also during my talk. So the disease occurs almost entirely into the women because I feel and I believe that we women are blessed with a beautiful body, and breast is a part of women body, which we women always called as nurturer of the kids. So this is a very special part of our body. So we all women have a breast. So that first risk factor starts with here also, that it always happens entirely to women. So all women are at risk. We always think that we are not at risk, or we cannot happen. This cannot happen with us. So this is a myth. So all women are at risk. Approximately 70 of the breast cancer occurs in the women. 70% of the breast cancer occurs in the women with the none or with the known risk factors, and only 1 out of 8 women in India will diagnose with the breast cancer in the near future, and risk increases in women over the age of 55 and whose close blood relatives have developed breast cancer are more prone to have this particular disease. So the hereditary factors is most important in this breast cancer development. So breast cancer is the second most common form of the cancer and the second leading cause of the cancer death in basically in the US women. Although more prevalence in the women breast in comparison to the men. In men, yes, men also do have the breast cancer, but in men, cancer can also affect them. But 1 out of 1,000 men will be develop breast cancer in their near future. So, according to a survey 2014, US estimates that approximate 2,32,670 new cases of breast cancer will be diagnosed in women later, and near about 2,360 new cases of breast cancer will be diagnosed in the men also in the near future. So there are several risk factors associated with it, and this, as I earlier discussed, and gender is one most important risk factor of the breast cancer. A woman is 200 times more likely than a man to develop this breast cancer. And as I told you that age is also a very important risk factor, that your risk of developing breast cancer increases as you get older, as half of the breast cancer are diagnosed in the women older than 60 years of age. Genetics, yes, as I told you, this breast cancer is having a close link with the heredity factor. So about 5 to 10% of the breast cancer cases are thought to be hereditary, and meaning that they result directly from the gene defected inherited from a parent. Okay, so family, one has to know their family history in order to prevent it, in order to be conscious about this, that they can also have the breast cancer. So risk is higher among the women whose close blood relatives has this disease, and less than 15% of women with the breast cancer have family members with this particular kind of disease. If you are overweight, you are at higher risk. And as we talk about the races, so overall research shows that white women are slightly more likely to develop breast cancer in comparison to African women. And as I told you, this is more prone to American white ladies. And there are, when we talk about the symptoms of breast cancer, so if we observe any kind of swelling of all parts of the breast, skin irritation or any kind of dumpling, breast or nipple pain, redness, thickening of nipples, and around the breast skins, and nipple discharge shows or indicates that you can have breast cancer. So at this stage, if you examine all these things in your body or in your breast, you have to visit your doctor immediately. So here, this is all about the what kind of symptoms you can have, what kinds of risk factors are there. And now I'm going to tell you few management tips of this breast cancer, which can be adopted by all ladies, whether they are pregnant or non-pregnant. So there are few tips which I'm going to share for the management of the cancer. So we can, this is a very good news that breast cancer survival rate has tripled over past 60 years, means we are becoming more and more aware about that particular disease. So here I'm with some few health tips, that having dense breasts makes your chances for breast cancer 4 times higher than the ladies who are not having the dense kind of breast. Know your family history, because 5 to 10% of breast cancer is due to hereditary reasons. And nutrition, when I'm talking about the nutrition, eat 5 or more than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables in your daily diet. Drink lots and lots of water, and you can also choose the whole grains as a healthy option in your diet, and you need to you need to limit the processed food and red meat in your daily diet. So and when you are crossing the age of 40, even I would say this is not nowadays you can find it out that many young ladies are suffering with the breast cancer. So if you are finding any kind of symptoms in your body, in your breast, you have to visit your physician. Or if you are crossing the age of 40, you have to remember that you have to go for the annual mammograms and clinical breast examines when you are crossing age of 40. We women are always avoiding all these things because we are more prone to our family health and everything, and we always nullify our health. So this becomes very important for a lady who are crossing age of 40. So and also you have to keep keenful eyes on your weight. Research shows that women who gained 21 to 30 pounds since age of 18 were 40% of more likely to develop breast cancer than those who hadn't gained more than 5 pounds. So weight is also an important factor in the development of the breast cancer. And you have to go for the physical activities. Women who walk briskly for the 1.25 to 2.5 hours a week had 10% less risk than women who are inactive totally. So physical activity is a very important criteria. And if you are a drinker, if you are having alcohol, so you have to limit the intake of alcohol. So your alcohol consumption on the daily basis should not be more than 1, and this can increase your taking more amount of alcohol can increase the risk by 1.5 times as compared to concern who doesn't drink. So you can also include some superfoods into your diets, like City of Hopes researchers have shown that with the help of pomegranate and grape seeds extract and some blueberries, all have powerful breast cancer fighting agents, because they are having a potent antioxidants might be possible. So they are having a very good effect on the when we talk about the different remedies against the fight of the breast cancer. So these few points I discussed in general when we are talking about the breast cancer, whether we are talking about the pregnant women or the non-pregnant women. These are few points which all the ladies should keep in their mind. Now I'm coming to the second part of my presentation, that is the breast cancer and pregnancy. I'm not going much into the detail. I hope Neha ma'am is there to discuss all the novel approaches. So here I'm discussing the what happens when you have the breast cancer during your pregnancy, or you diagnose with the breast cancer during the pregnancy. So diagnosing and treating the breast cancer are the complicated by the having pregnancy. Your primary goal is to cure the cancer, and if possible, or to keep it from spreading while also protecting health of your baby. So your cancer care team will need to coordinate to provide the breast cancer care for you and your baby. And there are no known cases of the breast cancer where that spreading to a fetus, although there are cases where has been found in the placenta. So till now no case has been detected in which if the mother is having breast cancer, baby is also having any kind of cancer. So this kind of case is not yet discovered, not yet found in a study. So when we have breast cancer during our pregnancy, our primary concern becomes to we mothers are very emotional about having when we get pregnancy or when we get babies, so that we all time try to avoid that our health. So this is my primary concern. When you are having that breast cancer during the pregnancy, so your health is equally important as your baby's health. So that emotional trauma, ladies generally deal with that particular emotional trauma when they have both together. So first of all, they must have a very strong family backup, or they must have, they need to talk with someone so that they can overcome with their mental trauma. So now I'm going to discuss what are the treatment options for the breast cancer when we have it during the pregnancy. When coming up with a treatment plan, so much we will depend upon the extent of the cancer. Your doctors will generally consider the number and size of tumors, and a tumor grade, which indicates how quickly the cancer can be expected to grow and spread, and the specific type of breast cancer, how far long you are into the pregnancy, or what kind of general health you are having, and your personal preferences, means your choice either to have the baby or to abort the baby. That is your personal preferences. So first of all, doctor suggests for the surgery. So the surgery we can take the first line treatment for the breast cancer even if you are pregnant. This may mean breast conserving surgery or mastectomy with a lymph node removal. So breast surgery for the early stage breast cancer is considered to be safe during the pregnancy, although the general anesthesia may prevent some risk to the baby. So uh, I have seen that many research there, they are having mixed kind of opinion whether to go for the surgery when we are having breast cancer during the pregnancy, or when we use general anesthesia, it can your baby can also be at risk. So there are several other factors which we consider when we have we were near to go for the surgery, that there are something called treatment of this after surgery. That is, this includes some chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and some hormonal therapies also. So chemotherapy generally isn't given during the baby's first trimester of pregnancy. So this time people avoid, doctors avoid the for undergone the chemotherapy when the baby's internal organs are developing. The study shows that it's safer to use some chemo drugs during the second and third trimester, but it can be harmful at the first trimester. But it's not usually given in the final 3 weeks of the pregnancy. So use of chemotherapy may depend on the specific type of breast cancer you have and how aggressive it is. And in some cases, waiting until you deliver your baby. So waiting could be an option in this case also. So next comes radiation. So doctors considers that radiation can be harmful for the baby, for the health of baby. So high dose of radiation given at the time of and any time of the during pregnancy can increase the risk of harm to the baby, and these risks can include this miscarriage, slow fetal growth, and birth defects also. And these kind of your baby is basically at these kind of risks. So for this reason, radiation therapy is usually delayed until and after the baby is born. So so doctors generally try to avoid giving radiation therapy because it can affect the health and also growth of your fetus. So next comes in the same line is hormone targeted therapies. So hormone targeted therapies aren't considered safe to use during the pregnancy. So at the first trimesters or the early age of the pregnancy, this radiation therapy is also avoided after the surgery. So But when we talk about the mastectomy during the pregnancy, so that surgery is primary treatment for the cancer, regardless of whatever you pregnant. So lumpectomy is given in the combination with the radiation therapy. Radiation must wait until and after baby is born. So we can go for the surgery, but for the radiation therapy, we have to wait until the baby is born. So many questions comes in the mind of the young ladies who are going to deliver a baby during the breast cancer, that whether in the time of breast cancer they can breastfeed or not. So if you want to have the safe breastfeeding, you have to contact your oncologist. Or few research also says that if possible to the breastfeed after a lumpectomy, but the scar tissues are and reduced milk volume can make it difficult that of breast. So your other breast isn't affected if you have a single side of kind of mastectomy. You will be able to breastfeed from the unaffected breast. But if you are going chemotherapy, hormone treatments, and targeted therapy of drugs, because these drugs can pass to your babies in the breast milk. So if you would like to breastfeed, talk to your oncologist in order to have this safe breastfeed. So I think breastfeeding can be done, but only after the advice of your oncologist. So the next things come in our mind when we are pregnant and we are having a breast cancer. So whether we can go for the mammography, whether we can go for the X-rays, this kind of questions comes in the mind of very young ladies. So I want to give a very short note on this, that how breast cancer detected or diagnosed during your pregnancy. So if you are having any of the symptoms of the breast cancer, your local doctor will carry out an examination and decide whether to refer you for the breast clinic for further tests. Having the breast cancer during the pregnancy in the first few months after your baby is born is sometimes called pregnancy-related breast cancer and pregnancy-associated breast cancer. So breast cancer is normally diagnosed at a breast clinic using methods known as triple assessment. So at the first part of this particular kind of assessment, usually we will be offered with ultrasound scan, which uses high frequency of sound waves to produce an image of the breast. This is completely safe and will not affect your baby in any way, but you may also be offered a mammogram also. So although that ultrasound and mammograms are usually the best way of detecting any early changes within the breast, sometimes you can also be suggested with MRI. And an MRI uses magnetic fields and radio waves to produce series of images of inside of the breast. So the safety of using this MRI during the pregnancy has not been yet established. But however, most of the small bodies looking at MRI during pregnancy shows it's safe, especially the first 3 months or the first trimester of the pregnancy. So the final part of the triple assessment includes either taking samples from the breast, that is breast tissue, or from the breast cell, that is called fine needle aspiration. So this kind of samples can be taken from your breast and can be sent to the laboratory for the final assessment. So you can go to this triple assessment in your pregnancy for the detection whether which kind of treatment you should go for. So and one more question arises in the mind of young ladies, that when they what I can say, the question arises in their mind: can I continue my pregnancy if I have breast cancer? So that is a personal question. that depends upon their views, whether they want to have where they can carry both simultaneously. So terminating the pregnancy isn't usual recommended when the breast cancer is diagnosed. So most women will continue their pregnancy while having breast cancer treatment. However, some women choose not to, because the decision to terminate a pregnancy is a very personal one. So it can be made only by you, or you and your partner. If you have one following decision, you can discuss it with your specialized team. So there is no evidence to suggest termination will improve the outcome for the women diagnosed with the breast cancer. So it doesn't affect whether you are having where you are taking decision to keep your baby or to abort it. There is a no correlation between them yet established. So however, the termination may be discussed if the chemotherapy is recommended during the first time and during the first trimester. So this becomes a very emotional question, and can give the young ladies a mental trauma also. So my personal advice for the young women is to discuss the things with the specialist, discuss the things with the women who already passed this situation, or who already faced this situation. Might be possible these women can give them a kind of good suggestion, or some emotional, this can lead to their emotional stability. And many question arises in the mind. One question is, can the breast cancer affect the baby also? So there is no evidence that showing that having breast cancer during the pregnancy affects your baby's development in your womb. So you cannot pass cancer on to your baby, and there is no evidence that your child will be developed cancer in later life as a result of you having breast cancer while you are pregnant. So there are no such kind of evidence till found. And is that breast cancer during pregnancy is aggressive? If you are having breast cancer during the pregnancy, that a particular cancer behavior of the cancer, or might change, or it can be aggressive. These kind of questions always being asked with the oncologist. So there is no conclusive evidence that breast cancer during the pregnancy is more aggressive than the breast cancer occurring at other times. So there is a no correlation between the having the breast cancer during the pregnancy and their aggressiveness. So however, because it may be difficult detecting a cancer in a breast during the pregnancy, so there can be a delay in diagnosis, meaning that cancer could be found at a later stage. This can happen, but there is a no kind of correlation found between between the pregnancy and breast cancer and their aggressiveness. So these kind of questions generally to be asked with the oncologist when young ladies entered with the a different kind of mindset when they are having breast cancer and pregnancy together. So next, they always be worried about which kind of treatment we are going to have. So there is another thing, how we are going to choose the therapy, which factors affect choosing the therapies of the cancer treatment. Like if you are diagnosed with the breast cancer during pregnancy, you will be usually be able to have effective treatment for your breast cancer, and it shouldn't be affect your baby's development. So the pregnancy measures into the trimesters. Like each trimester is of the pregnancy represents a number of weeks. Like we are having generally 3 trimesters, that first trimester, second trimester, and third trimester. So generally the treatment you are offered during the pregnancy will depend upon how far you are into your pregnancy, when your breast cancer and when your breast cancer is diagnosed. So in the in that first trimester, generally you can be suggested with the surgery that can be safely done during all the trimester of the pregnancy, and you may be offered a choice between mastectomy and breast conservation surgery. So during first trimester of the pregnancy, you are more likely to be offered mastectomy, and this is because all the women who have a mastectomy needs radiotherapy, whereas radiotherapy is usually needed after breast conserving surgery also. So radiotherapy is generally not recommended at any time during pregnancy because risk of radiation, that there is a risk of radiation to your baby's development. So if you are diagnosed your breast cancer in the second trimester, you will be having chemotherapy after your surgery, and the breast conserving surgery may also be considered as an option. So this is and if there is a third chances that you are diagnosed with the breast cancer at the very later stage, that is the third trimester of your breast cancer. So at this stage, the breast conserving surgery may be considered an option, as radiotherapy can be then given after your baby is born. Means you the third trimester is the last trimester of the pregnancy, so you can have the breast conservation therapy before the delivery of the baby and the radiation therapy after the delivery of the baby. So these kind of questions comes around in the mind of young ladies, and here I am doing a short, very short attempt to solving all those queries. And there is many myth again related with the breast cancer also, that we cannot breastfeed our babies if we are having breast cancer. So I already answered this question. And the last therapy which we can have, that is hormone or endocrine therapy. So hormone therapy will be prescribed if your breast cancer has receptors within the cell that bind to hormone estrogen, known as estrogen receptor positive or ER positive of breast cancer. Even the estrogen binds these kind of receptors. It can stimulate the cancer to grow. All the breast cancer are treated for the estrogen receptors, and using tissues from the biopsy or after surgery. So this can be another option. And there are few targeted cancer therapies also, which is also called as biological therapies. This is a group of drugs that blocks the growth and the spread of cancer. They interfere with the process of the cells that helps cancer to grow. So there is another therapy which is known as targeted cancer therapy. We can undergone in this therapy also. So I hope that at the third trimester, this or we can go this therapy after the delivery of the baby also. So these kind of therapies can be done when you are having both together. And later, after the birth of the baby, the mother always needs the high kind of counseling things by the team of the oncologist. So I hope this short session of mine are sufficient, or maybe the young women got sufficient knowledge of the breast cancer. What is breast cancer? What are the different treatment strategies for the breast cancer? So this is all about from my side. Again, I would like to dedicate my sincere thanks to Principal, Deccan School of Pharmacy, Dr. Saeed Abdul Aziz ji, that he gave me a chance to give me my short awareness kind of lecture to all the young women out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for making all the way, coming from Bhopal and attending this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Reenu Yadav, for the informative knowledge shared on the concept of the webinar. I now request Mrs. Sharifa Habib, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, to introduce our resource person, Dr. Neha Tabassum.
Good morning, everyone. I feel fortunate and take pride and pleasure to introduce today's young research scientist fellow, Dr. Neha Tabassum, the alumnus of Deccan School of Pharmacy, who was awarded with the degree of Doctor of Pharmacy in the year 2015 and went to pursue her Doctor of Philosophy in Clinical Medicine Research at Imperial College, London, UK. Presently, she is a scientist research fellow and teacher in Higher Education Academy at prestigious Imperial College, London, and is also a core member of Cancer Genetics Group in the Department of Surgery and Cancer. In her academic achievement, she was bestowed first prize by the registrar and convener of Osmania University for demonstrating academic excellence throughout her campus life. She organized and led cancer awareness programs. In her scientific contributions, she was awarded for the best paper in year 2019 at British Association of Cancer Research in Breast Cancer. She has received Best Speaker Award at National Elocution Competition held by Indian Pharmaceutical Association in the year 2014. Dr. Neha Tabassum has several publications to her credit, especially in Oncogene, Oncotarget, BioIrex IV, IUSR, Journal of Pharmacy, American Journal of Phytomedicine and Clinical Therapeutics, International Journal of Pharmaceutical Sciences and Research. She is also a peer reviewer in Oncogene. Her research contributions are acknowledged by the Royal Society of Medicine, National Health Services, and consulted medical oncologists and surgeons. She was also awarded bursary for honors by Wellcome Genome Campus, Cambridge, UK. Apart from this, she was a part of clinical trial studies on prostate cancer in the multicentric stem cell transplantation for triamcinolone, malform, and whole blood cell transplantation. She has real-time proficiencies and designed an innovative elective online module, Impacts, that is, inclusive module for professional and critical thinking skills for students of Faculty of Medicine at Imperial College, London. She has professional associations with American Association of Cancer Research, European Association of Cancer Research, and British Association of Cancer Research. Now, I request Dr. Neha Tabassum to proceed with the presentation.
Hi everyone, a very good morning to all. I'm Neha Tabassum, a former student from Deccan School of Pharmacy and currently a scientist researcher and a teaching fellow from Imperial College London. Today I'm going to talk about my current ongoing work where I'm trying to understand the association between the age of first full-term pregnancy and the breast cancer risk over the period of time by looking at the mutational landscape of normal human breast. Let me try and share the screen with you. So basically, my research has been revolving around to understand how the age of first full-term pregnancy is affecting the subsequent risk of developing breast cancer over the course of time by the time a woman reaches a post-menopausal age. Very thankful to Dr. Professor Reenu Yadav that she have already introduced you all with the multiple risk factors of breast cancer. We are all aware there are so many around, like there's so many breast cancer risk factors which have been studied so far, basically to understand the etiology of breast cancer. But there are still few risk factors which are not like completely understood up until now, and age of pregnancy is one such modifiable risk factor of breast cancer. The reason why we are interested in understanding this specific risk factor of breast cancer was based on various epidemiological studies, which basically states that a pregnancy at an early age of 24 and below confers a protection against breast cancer, whereas a pregnancy at an older age of 35 and above increases the risk of developing breast cancer, relatively higher than the risk when you compare the risk with an early mother or a woman who never had a child. Irrespective of the age of first full-term pregnancy, you can see there is a transient increase in the risk of developing breast cancer between the two groups, and this risk basically lasts from 3 to 5 years immediately following pregnancy. Also, after 24 years of age, the previous studies have shown that there is a 3.5% increase in the risk of breast cancer with every year after 24 years of age. Additionally, it has also been shown in the epidemiological studies that multiple parity, like multiple pregnancy at an early age, is more protective than a multiple pregnancy at a later age. Now, this specific figure has been taken from a meta-analysis which involves 84 epidemiological studies where the clinical data was collected retrospectively from the patients who already had breast cancers. So that was at the last end point from the breast cancer patients. But when we look at the current scenario where we consider all the epidemiological studies, which basically have looked into the age and pregnancy criteria, we notice that there is 38 to 50% decrease in the risk of breast cancer in case of women who had an early pregnancy, and there was a 22 to 36% increase in the risk of developing breast cancer, which was seen in women who had a later pregnancy. So before we could start with anything else, let me show you like the development. How is the development of breast over the reproductive years of a woman? But before trying to understand the women, let's have a previous look at this is how a mice mammary gland look like. So in the virgin rat, these are the ducts which eventually produces milk. During pregnancy, there is a massive proliferation of the epithelial cells, which is up to 5 times when you compare it with this adult virgin group. During lactation, there is again proliferation and differentiation in the milk-producing cells, and then after this, breastfeeding or lactation, there is a regression of the breast, which is also called as involution. Now, there is a huge component of inflammatory cells in here. This is a sort of wound healing process where there is a huge apoptosis of mammary gland, where the mammary gland goes back to the virgin state, similar to that of an adult. Now, what actually happens in a woman, in a human, it's very difficult to understand because no woman would be ready to donate a breast tissue sample when she's pregnant. No woman would be ready to give a breast tissue sample when she's undergoing her menstrual cycles. So it was very difficult. So keeping this critical and sensitive issue in mind, we thought like if we could actually hypothesize something looking into these development criteria of breast during the reproductive years in rats, we could possibly come up with a hypothesis. So while trying to do this, we thought that if we could understand the normal human breast and the morphological and development of this normal human breast, we could basically have some insights in understanding the disease breast cancer better. So based on this idea, we hypothesize that the cells carrying the driver mutations already exist in the pre-pregnant normal breast. So if this happens at this stage, so what we hypothesize with the cells carrying the driver mutations, they already exist in the pre-pregnant normal breast with a very low frequency. And when these cells expand during pregnancy, the cells carrying the driver mutations also expand in frequency, increasing the probability of developing breast cancer. So basically, the dynamics of the mammary gland differentiation during pregnancy may therefore increase the risk of developing breast cancer due to the proliferation and differentiation of the mammary gland. So in detail, if you're trying to understand what happens in a human female, it is very difficult to understand, because when it comes to rat, they have a pregnancy, following pregnancy, they have lactation period, following lactation, they've got an involution period. But in humans, we women have menstrual cycles as well. So this is something which makes it a very complex process to understand. To simplify this, we decided to come up with a hypothesis, and to do this, what we did was we assumed that there is a single mutant clone which is already existing in the pre-pregnant normal breast. Now, with every cycle of menstruation, so during the menstrual cycle is basically divided into 3 different phases: follicular phase, luteal phase, and the apoptotic phase. When we talk about follicular phase, in the follicular phase, there is a massive differentiation of the alveoli of human breast. So basically when you have your menstrual cycle, women can actually, they can touch the breast and see that there is an enlargement in the breast which is seen. And following the menstrual cycle, so once the menstrual cycle finishes, you can see that the breast goes back to the normal place. But this is not, it is just similar to pregnancy, but there is not massive, enlargement of the breast which is seen during menstrual cycle. But definitely the menstrual cycle mimics a pregnancy. So we thought, so what happens is cyclic hormonal effect during the periodic cycle. This may affect the clone growth and shrinkage of both the driver and the passenger mutations. Here I'm talking about 2 different terms: driver mutations and passenger mutations. So basically, when I talk about driver mutations, these are the mutations which basically triggers the cancer or initiates the cancer. When I talk about passenger mutations are the mutations which basically helps in the progression of the cancer once the cancer is already initiated. Okay, so cyclic hormonal effect during the periodic cycle, this may affect the clone growth and shrinkage of both the driver and the passenger mutations. During the apoptotic phase, that means during the end of the menstrual cycle, at the luteal stage of the menstrual cycle, potentially mutated clone, that is possibly clones of driver genes that can give you cancer, could either be eliminated because of that apoptosis of cell, or at least there is a shrinkage of the mutated clone which is seen. However, if the clone cannot be extinguished completely during this phase and the mutation presents a high fitness, this could further expand in the next follicular phase of the next menstrual cycle of a woman. So this is like a circle, it's coming on. The chances of such genetic damage, it increases with age. Further, and this is significantly increasing during pregnancy when the epithelium expands for the lactation. Now, this would explain why after each pregnancy, there is a transient risk or higher chance of developing pregnancy-associated breast cancer. On the other hand, what we can assume is pregnancy also pause the accumulation of mutated clones in the epithelium. I say this because during pregnancy, the woman never experiences a menstrual cycle. So there's no point of further divisions and further apoptosis, isn't it? So on the other hand, the pregnancy basically pauses the accumulation of these mutations due to the clone shrinkage and apoptosis, thereby delaying the long-term risk. So at this point, if a woman has a pregnancy, there's a huge cell division, but after the pregnancy, following pregnancy, there is a shrinkage of clone or the complete elimination of clone which is seen. And then the final clone which comes after involution is this. Now this is similar to this. However, so for what I meant with this, thereby it delays the long-term risk of developing breast cancer in a nulliparous woman. So when you compare this risk, so if you have an early pregnancy at the age of 25, with the pregnancy, there is a massive cell division and the clone also accumulates. Following pregnancy, there is an involution, apoptosis, and the clones shrink in size or get completely eliminated. But in case of nulliparous women are the women who never had a child. In their case, since there is no pregnancy, with every menstrual cycle, there is accumulation of mutation, which is seen over the ages. So by the end, as the age grows, there is a higher risk of developing breast cancer in terms of nulliparous women. That means a woman who never had a child. But in terms of early pregnant women, the risk is delayed. At the same age of 40, the risk is much less for early pregnant women when you compare it with a nulliparous woman. Now, additionally, what happens is like by the age of 40, by the time the woman reaches the age of 40, the clonal expansion is so much that the clone is so big enough that it could easily give you breast cancer. So this is why it is, so this is basically explaining that at the same age, just because of the differences at the age of pregnancy, there is a differential risk of developing breast cancer. And this is why a late age pregnant woman has a higher risk of developing breast cancer when you compare the risk with a nulliparous woman or an early age pregnant woman. So this is basically a hypothesis with which we came up with. Now to understand this hypothesis, what was more important is to get normal sample. So it's really difficult to get normal samples because no woman would be ready, as I said, to donate the breast tissue sample when she's pregnant because there's ethical issues, there's emotional trauma and everything attached. And, you know, basically people are afraid of donating breast tissue sample. I wouldn't donate it. So it was very difficult to basically get these normal breast tissue samples. When I say normal, these samples which I've collected for my study are the healthy breast tissue samples. And after a period of like about a year, I just came across this Susan Komen Tissue Bank, which is in USA, where healthy women voluntarily come to this tissue bank and donated the breast tissue sample, saying that our parents or, you know, like our friends were affected with breast cancer. We want to give a biopsy of our breast just to help in cancer research. So that was very generous of those ladies. And that was a big, big plus point for us because in the history of breast cancer, nobody has ever studied the healthy breast. So this is like a first pilot study considering the normal healthy tissues and analyzing some data to get some really nice information which could basically help in preventing breast cancer or deciding a best treatment for breast cancer. So this tissue bank was so generous enough, they gave us an access to about 2,221 samples, normal breast tissue samples from the tissue bank, of which we selected about 60 normal breast tissue samples. 30 were parous, 30 were nulliparous. When I say parous, these are the women who experienced a pregnancy and have delivered a baby. When I say nulliparous, these are the women who never had a pregnancy. So we selected only 60 samples. You must be wondering that she've got like 2,221 samples. Why the hell she've got like just 60 samples? But there was a big reason behind that. Like there are different factors which affects the risk of having breast cancer. So while considering these tissues, I had to be like very vigilant enough to decide this thing. So there was a very specific selection criteria we had for the selection of our tissue samples. It was uniparity. I selected unipara samples. Uniparity is a woman with only one single pregnancy. So I selected only one pregnancy because the clinical studies have already shown that if a woman have multiple pregnancies, that may either increase the risk of having breast cancer or either decrease the risk of having breast cancer. So that was a big controversy. So to avoid a confusion and have a basic simple model development, in order to understand this whole theory of age and pregnancy, we avoided to take the samples who had multiple pregnancies. So that was one fine reason to select the uniparous patients. And another was, as the Professor Renu Yadav has clearly and very nicely explained about the history of breast cancer and the risk of developing breast cancer, which is hereditary, it definitely has a role to play in breast cancer. So any women amongst these 2,221 samples who had a previous history of breast cancer in the family, those samples were not collected for the study. So, and also the next was contraception. Now, there's a big controversy. It's a controversial issue. Like many of the researchers say that if you have a contraceptive, there is a protection against breast cancer because there's no menstruations, there's no dividing of cells, your cells are paused at an age. But other studies have shown that if you have a contraceptive, there is a slight increase in the risk of having breast cancer. And again, to avoid this, we consider the samples which never had used any contraceptives. So I'm sure you can understand like how precious these samples are, because it's really rare to get all these sort of samples. And the last and but not the least with the medication history. Some of the medications basically influences, like they promote the risk of breast cancer or promote the initiation of cancer. So we also have considered the medication history, and we have avoided the samples who are on a medication which could influence the risk of having breast cancer, such as HRT therapies. If you look at the hormonal therapies, it might just, it might just increase a shoot of estrogen, a shoot of progesterone must have been seen, and then there might be a risk of having pregnancy associated, like estrogen receptor positive breast cancer or progesterone receptor positive breast cancer or HER2 receptors. So just to avoid all these things, these specific selection criteria was taken into consideration, and only 60 normal samples were collected, of which 30 were paras, 30 were nulliparas. And let me show you the details, what I had from the tissue bank. The tissue bank basically gave us the information about, like, there were the names of the patient as well. Just for the privacy issues, I've labeled them as sample numbers. There was the date of collection of the tissues. There was the age at which the tissue was collected, the race of the patient, if the patient was ever pregnant or not, if at all a pregnant woman, how many pregnancies they had, and what about the live births? Did they give it birth to a child or they had a termination of pregnancy? And age of first full-term pregnancy, medication histories, and the cellularities and H&Es. So after I had the tissues, now the plan was to decide the methodology to understand this whole mess of age of pregnancy and breast cancer risk. So we decided to have a flow chart. We started with sample collection, which we already did. And then we did some histochemical staining, amazing histochemical staining. I'm gonna just, show the slides to you about that. And then we did like laser capture microdissection, which is an astonishing, I must say that it's an amazing microscope, which anybody, I would always suggest to use it if you're interested in studying some desired specific cells. And then from those cells collected from the histological tissues, I isolated the DNA, and then we have done whole genome sequencing. And I must pressurize and I must emphasize on the fact that this was for the first time that a normal breast was sequenced, and that to a whole genome sequencing. and whole genome sequencing was done. So here's the beautiful slide of my beautiful work. So the first two slides, as you can see, these are the immunohistochemically stained slides, which are stained with hematoxylin and eosin. As you can see, these tissues, this mammary tissue is from a 39 years old pregnant woman. And let me make it clear, these tissues are collected from the woman not when they were having pregnancy, but soon after their pregnancies, 1 or 2 years after their pregnancies. So as you can see from these two images, the first two images are the hematoxylin stained sections in the normal breast. You can see that this normal breast has a very small TDLUs, terminal ductal unit, lobular units, which is surrounded by a vast amount of stroma. This is all stroma, and this white caps, these are the fat tissues. I've used laser capture microdissection, and I must tell you, it was amazing. I then stained the tissues with CCO, that is cytochrome C oxidase, which basically reacts with thiaminobenzidine and gives brown color only to the epithelial cells and not to the stromal cells. And I was more keen on understanding the mutations in epithelial cells, because epithelial cells are the cells which play an important role in the initiation of cancer. Let me show you how this microscope worked. So once I stained the slides, I went into the microscope. You basically outline the layers of each single cell, and then you instruct the microscope to cut those desired sections you have outlined. And then the microscope catapults it, collects these desired sections of your cell and collects it in an Eppendorf tube. Sometimes there are bigger sections, you have to collect it multiple times, but lots of efforts. But when you see the results, you'll be really, really happy about that. So in the bottom, you can see these are the images captured pre and post LCM. The tissue and the membrane, as you have just seen, they are both catapulted into the tube there. And then it is this specific cell and the tissues are ready for DNA extraction. And then I went up to the lab, I did some DNA extraction out of it. And then also the toughest part was, like, you see the stroma is fat, isn't it? So it was so difficult to cut the stroma, and laser capture couldn't really cut that stroma. So in order to cut that elastic tissue, I had to go manually and cut those stroma of this tissue. And it was really, really hard. And to do the sequencing, what we did, we basically had an input of 200 nanograms of DNA. As you have seen, there are very little TDLUs in healthy women. It's only in the case of cancer, you have lots of cell division and it is easier for you to get epithelial cell. But in terms of a healthy woman who didn't have a cancer, no signs of cancer, they just have a few epithelial cells. So it was a tremendous effort we had to put to get this 200 nanograms of DNA. And then after collection of the DNA, we basically have sent the samples out for whole genome sequencing. And we did the sequencing at a depth of 300, at the depth of 30. It was 100 base paired end sequencing we have done. And once we had the data back from the BGI, we have done it from Illumina platform. And then once we had the data, we had to analyze it. And to analyze this data, we came up with this beautiful pipeline to analyze the data. So this pipeline was developed by myself and my colleague, Dr. Philip Carter. He's a bioinformatician in our lab. So the first step in our analysis was basically, like when you get the data from whole genome sequencing, there is an ample amount of letters you get because our DNA is made of A, C, G, T, it's so many alphabets coming in, but we need to make sense out of those alphabets. We need to make some meaning out of those alphabets. So the first step was basically our procedure was pre-processing the analysis of this data pre-processing the raw data to get that analysis ready reads. That means which makes much more sense. So these were the different steps. I'm not going to go in detail about the bioinformatics thing, but I'm very happy to answer any questions about any tool if you want to ask me. The second step was subsequent variant discovery to identify the SNPs, that is single nucleotide polymorphism, that is one change in the sequence of DNA, and insertions and deletions, which are indels. When I tell indels, indels basically incorporates or removes one or more nucleotides in it. And the third and the final step of our bioinformatic analysis was to refine all the data what we got from the step 1 and step 2 to give them some functional information, to give some biological meaning to them and predict the SNP indel effects. So basically we're trying to understand with all these mutations, what is this happening different with the pregnancy at different ages? So why is this a differential risk which we see with the age of pregnancy? So what we did, we compared our analysis with some existing resources such as International Cancer Genome Consortium databases or breast cancer genomes. Also, let me make it clear to you that for every study, you need a positive control. For every study, there is a positive control. But in our study, as I said, this is a very pilot study and no one have studied the normal breast. So when you get this normal breast, what are you going to compare it with? So it was very difficult. So what we thought is, as I showed you that we collected DNA from the epithelia and the stroma, both from the same patient. So we sequenced epithelia and the stroma differently from the same patient. But when we got the results, we compared. And we were keen on understanding the epithelia. So we compared the two mutation genomes and the common mutations between the epithelia and the stroma. These were excluded. And the mutations which were just specific to the epithelia were considered for the analysis. And any results, which I'm going to show you now, only from the analysis from those epithelial cells. As I mentioned, that epithelial cells are the only cells which play a role in the initiation of cancer. So that was our control. Mostly people basically use either blood samples or they have, either blood samples. We do have blood samples now, but at that time when I was doing my analysis, we didn't knew that the tissue bank was such an amazing tissue bank that is also had some blood from the same patients. It's very rare, I must tell you on that. So now coming to the results, the first results. Now, since it was the first time we were looking, we were not sure if our hypothesis is correct or not. We assume that there are driver mutations. We assume there is an accumulation. But before trying and testing our hypothesis about driver mutation, firstly, we wanted to see, is there a mutational burden in the normal breast? So overall, what we noticed was in both the epithelia and the stroma, we observed there is an increase in the mutation burden with each, as you can see from here, right? So there is an increase in the accumulation of mutations with age. And this was seen only in the epithelia and not in the stroma. In the stroma, as I said, it is a inflammatory component. It has got fibroblasts, blood vessels, cells in it, fat tissues in it. It has got fibroblasts. It has got so many things in it. Maybe because of that, because due to the wider interpatient variability of the number of mutations accumulated in the stroma, it is different. But in the epithelia, as you can see, there is a steady increase in the accumulation of mutation with age. Now, as I discussed, we wanted to see what happens to the substitution and what happens to the indels within these mutations we see in both epithelia and the stroma. Let me remind you again, substitution are the changes in the single nucleotide in the DNA sequence, whereas indel, it incorporates or removes one or more nucleotides. So in the epithelia, the mutation burden in the 25 samples varied among samples ranging between 75 to 32,000. So as you can see, it was from 75 to 32,266 substitution, basically a median of around 1,866. And in terms of indels, the mutations were from 720 to 49,365 with a median of 816. And when we looked at the stroma, we saw the same thing, that the substitutions were from 74 to 35,976 with a median of 9,425, and between 5 and 91,767 indels with a median of 18,739. And since we are interested in age, we wanted to see with every year after 24 years of age, how much is the mutation, like what is the rate of mutation? So we did linear regressions. So with that linear regressions, we got to know that with every year, there is about 1,470 mutations per year. Now, after the age, as we said, we are interested in parity status as well. Parity is pregnancy. We are also interested to see what happens between the parous woman who had a child and between a nulliparous woman who never had a child. So in the epithelium, so here you can see in the epithelium, the burden differed according to the parity, as you can see. So only in the nulliparous breast, which is the blue line basically is the nulliparous and the orange is your parous. So only in the nulliparous, the burden significantly increased with the age compared to the parous counterparts. Here the rate of accumulation was approximately 1,740 mutations per year in the nulliparous gland, which is 8-fold increase when it comes to early parous, like around at 25 years of age, and 1.55-fold increase when you compare it with the parous. But again, this was not seen in the stroma. And coming back to the epidemiological studies, and the first slide I have shown you, that we have seen that the age of 35 is a critical age after which the protective role of pregnancy basically diminishes. So within our data set, what happened? We observed that there is a critical shift which is much closer to 32, where the regression line intercept. As you can see here, these two lines are intercepting at this point. Now, this difference may be explained by the fact that our samples were collected minimum of 2 years after parturition. So after the pregnancy, as I said, these samples were collected 1 or 2 years after pregnancy. So the number of mutations we observe may be lower than what we could see during or soon after pregnancy. Remarkably, compared to the epithelium, the stromal compartment accumulates the mutations in different modes, you can see. While not significant, parous individuals tend to accumulate mutations with an age compared to the nulliparous group. So we estimated what happens, like what is the rate of mutations in the stroma. So it was 9,340 mutations per year. Whereas in here, it was 1,794 mutations per year. As the pregnancy is a risk factor for both pregnancy-associated breast cancer and postmenopausal breast cancer, now is the time to analyze our hypothesis, where we assumed that there are pre-existing driver mutations which are present in every individual, irrespective of you having cancer or not. So I mean, like myself, if I don't have a cancer, I know I don't have a cancer, but I can say that there are driver mutations present in my body as well. In my breast, there are driver mutations. They are just waiting for a hit. And if it hits, there is a breast cancer initiation. So this driver mutations are present in all and every woman. So that is an hypothesis. That was our hypothesis. And to test our hypothesis, what we did is like we have taken into consideration these 94 driver mutation genes, driver genes. So you must be thinking like, why did I selected only those 94 genes? Because this driver genes has been taken from a paper which was published by a group, Nick Zinal from Cambridge Institute. So they basically sequenced 960 breast cancer genomes, and after analyzing all the breast cancer genomes, they came up with these driver genes and said like every cancer patient had one or the other driver genes of all these 94 driver genes. So this is why this was very critical for us to consider these. So we considered all these, we analyzed the mutation burden. So we detected what is the result. So we detected the mutations in all the previously identified driver genes in all the healthy patients, but with different frequency, as you can see, with around 60%. So the x-axis basically gives you fraction of mutated samples. So around 60% of samples had RUNX mutation and ESR1 mutations, both in parus and nulliparous. And we also see the fact that accumulation of breast cancer genes significantly increases with age in nulliparous, as you can see. In the nulliparous, the green line basically shows that there is a significant increase in the risk of developing breast cancer with the accumulation of mutations. So if these are driver genes which are assumed to give you or initiate cancer in your body, so there is an accumulation with the nulliparous breast. So this is what our hypothesis says. So this basically explains or supports our hypothesis. And in terms of a nulliparous, you can see this is relatively less accumulation of mutation which is seen. Now after doing breast cancer genes, so this basically have shown that our hypothesis was correct, and they are driver mutations which are present in the human breast, irrespective of you having a cancer or no at the current state. And there is an accumulation of mutations in a nulliparous breast. There is also an accumulation in parous breast, but it is relatively less when compared to the nulliparous breast. After this, the paper which I was talking to you about also mentioned some driver mutations, driver events. Driver events are short hits. If you have a mutation in the driver genes, like to get a cancer, you basically need lots of mutations and within the same cell to give you a cancer. But when you have this mutation, driver hits, that means that one single hit of that driver event is enough for you to initiate the cancer. So we also observed that hits within our healthy tissue samples. Now, it doesn't mean that it is going to give you cancer, because to give you a cancer, within your epithelia of the breast, around 10 to the power of 16 cells have to be covered with the driver mutations to get a cancer and to be detected in the clinic. And if you don't have that, the cancer wouldn't be detected, neither would have been initiated. So as you can see from in here, 0.25, it indicates that 25% of the cells in the epithelium are having these driver events. And this is why this woman is still healthy and not having cancer. But maybe in the near future, if she has another hit, maybe bad luck, then there is high chance that that specific woman will develop cancer. So me showing these driver events within our samples, which are healthy and normal, doesn't mean that they have cancer. It just indicates that they are at a higher risk of developing breast cancer. And let me again make it clear, these driver events were not seen in all of the tissue samples which we have collected. Rather, these mutations driver events were seen only in 2 and 3 samples from within parous and nulliparous group. Now, these are the few results which I've done. With the conclusion, our study basically categorizes the genomic landscape of healthy breast and highlights the contribution of both age and pregnancy on the probability of you developing a breast cancer. So while age contributes to the accumulation of mutations, as we have seen, the high proliferation, because there is a significant or massive division of your epithelial cells, because the breast is basically, preparing itself for lactation of the child. And this is why there is a high proliferation of these driver events as well. Like several other studied healthy tissues. Now I say several others to healthy tissues because they are tissues like esophagus, skin, lungs. They are studying healthy tissues basically to understand what happens in a normal breast, so that like if you know what happens in a normal scenario and what if there's an error in a normal scenario, what basically leads or what basically transforms a normal cell into a cancerous cell, that will essentially help us in understanding the whole whole disease in a better way. And if we could know at an early age that there is a probability of you getting breast cancer with these mutations at this rate, then there is a high chance that, like preventive strategies could be made. If a woman who had like supposedly the ultimate aim of our study is to develop a model. So this model will have on the x-axis, it is going to have mutations in it, like the mutations in it. On the y-axis, it's going to show you what is the percentage or what is the rate of division, rate of proliferation of these mutations, which we could see. So if a patient basically comes into the clinic and says like, look, I'm 28 years old, because 24 years, after 24, there is a 3.5% increase in the risk of having breast cancer with every year. So if a woman is 24, probably she is having a much bigger risk of having breast cancer. If she comes to us with this model, what we do is like, we say, you're 28. So we are like, you take a biopsy of that woman, you do the whole genome sequencing. And this is not like a new technique which we are introducing, which we are suggesting. This is already existing techniques, which are just trying to make the use of these existing technologies and techniques, and then find a solution for how treating breast cancer, preventing breast cancer. So with these women, we would say like, look, you're 28, you've got these mutations are dividing at this rate, and by the time you reach 40 years of you are at the risk of developing breast cancer. Now this woman is more vigilant now. Now she knows that she's at a higher risk and she might develop breast cancer. So she will be brought into surveillance program and she will be monitored over years. As in the previous introduction by Professor Reenu Yadav, we have seen that she said women after 40 years should go for regular mammography tests, which is very good. With these new technologies like sequencing, a young woman who is planning for a baby can go and have a simple biopsy, core-needle biopsy, and then do her whole genome sequencing and get an idea what is the risk of having breast cancer. So that's the whole plan of we trying to understand this whole study. So with this, Susan Komen Tissue Bank, we would like to thank them because these special tissues, amazing tissues are being given by Komen Tissue Bank, Barts Cancer Institute because they are doing mathematical modeling for us, Imperial College NHS Trust because they have donated the samples to us, breast tissue samples to us, and Action Against Cancer for funding my research, and this is my amazing group. Thank you all. That's my email address. If you have a personal question or any questions after the meeting, I'll be more than happy to answer you. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Neha, for broadening an outlook on novel approaches in prevention of breast cancer with your informative address. Just a little housekeeping before we get started with the interactive session. We have sent the feedback link in the chat box of Zoom as well as YouTube. All the participants are requested to fill in the feedback form to avail the certificate. Now let's start the question and answer session, paneled by our speakers. As expected, we have a volley of questions that have poured in. Thus, the questions that are relevant to the topic are only being considered.
Yeah, madam, just I want to add.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Yeah. Dr. Renu Yadav, she lost her mother because of COVID infections, and she was very much in a depressed state. And we had this program. So she came all the way from her village to attend this session, and she left. So the questions may now be put to Dr. Neha. Hopefully, this will be done with because of her expertise in this. And secondly, the questions may be directed to Dr. Renu Yadav, also in case we don't get any appropriate answers or to the satisfaction of this thing. But I am very confident that Dr. Neha Tabassum does answer
Hopefully.
the limitations of time. Thank you.
The very first question is by Dr. Challa Srinivas Reddy. The question is, do women have more chances of breast cancer after menopause?
So basically, as I said, there is an accumulation of mutations with age. So as the age increases, the risk also increases. So with the post-menopause, that is the time that majority of the women are diagnosed with breast cancer. So the answer would be yes, that is the time where the majority of women are diagnosed with breast cancers.
Next question is, what is the role of estrogen in breast cancer? Is breast cancer curable or only treatable?
So with the advancement, I would say that there are so many treatments which are offered at the minute. Like Herceptin is one of the best treatment for breast cancer, which not only treats but also cures breast cancer. So the point in treating and curing breast cancer is how early you detect these breast cancers. If the breast cancer is detected quite at an early stage, there is a more than 60% chance of that cancer to be completely curable. And there are cases, we see the clinical cases and papers where it's been shown that even at the stage 4 breast cancer, women are treated and they are cured for the breast cancer as well. So the point is how early you get diagnosed with breast cancer and how early you detect it. So the whole key point is you testing yourself at the defined ages, as Professor Yadav already mentioned, like when you reach 40, do your mammograms every 6 months. When you're 25, now that you know there is a risk of you developing breast cancer, keep an eye on the symptoms on your breast. When you are sitting, like when you are at home, try and touch your breast, try and sense it. If you're seeing a lump, if you are seeing a lymph there, if you feel pain sort of thing there, then do visit your clinicians, and there is a high chance that you'll be cured and you'll be treated. The best treatment will be offered.
Moving towards another question raised by Pratima Chaudhary. The question is, how to differentiate between benign and malignant tumor in breast based on symptoms?
So basically, you can't differentiate between benign and malignant tumors just by, sensing it, like physical examination. For that, you would definitely have to go for a core biopsy or a needle biopsy. And then it's only then we could say whether you have a malignant or a benign tumor.
Our next question is by Parveen Banu. Is breast cancer 100% absent in males, even in those men developing gynecomastia?
No, the answer would be no, because males are also equally at a risk of having breast cancer. I wouldn't say exactly equal risk with the women, because we as a women, one risk factor, as Professor Renu Yadav mentioned, that we being women are, like that gives you a major risk of having breast cancer. But the men are not excluded, because there are quite a few cases. 1 in 1,000 of men are affected with breast cancer. So there are chances of men getting breast cancer as well. So it is always important for a man to check on his nipples and see if he has some changes in it, if he has some inflammation around the nipples, if there's an enlargement, if he has some pus discharge or anything. And he should definitely visit a clinic and get it diagnosed, So there is a probability that men are equally, at a risk of having breast cancer.
Due to time constraint, we could take up only limited questions. You can send your questions to the WhatsApp number mentioned in the brochure. Answers will be sent to you. Here I move on to the last question by Muhammad Akram. Is there any relation between contraceptive pills and breast carcinoma?
Yes, I would say yes, because there are studies. I think there was a meta-analysis which was done from France by a nurses group, which involved about 18,000, which about 69,000 of patients were included in it who were having contraceptives. They have shown that women who take contraceptives, in them, there is a decrease in the risk of breast cancer when you compare them with the women of the same age who consumed contraceptives. So that was one study. But just opposite to that study, very recently in 2019, there was another study published involving again 64,000 patients, which showed that with the contraceptives, there is a 10% increase in the risk of having breast cancer when you compare them. So it is a controversial topic. So you can't for definite say that contraceptives are beneficial, but it's research. So we basically have to keep an eye on the clinical things coming up. So maybe we will have a solution for that in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Neha. With this, we wind up the question and answer session. Now, I request Ms. Humaira Fatima, Associate Professor, Department of Pharmacognosy, to deliver vote of thanks.
Good afternoon. It is a privilege to be given a chance to deliver a vote of thanks for this enlightening international event. Speakers of Beauty and Brains highlighting this session with their talks. Firstly, I would like to thank our Principal Professor Dr. Syed Abdul Aziz for his stewardship and for inspiring and bracing us at every step of this international webinar. Next, I would like to thank our distinguished international speaker, Professor Dr. Renu Yadav, Mrs. India International 2019, for aspiring us with her informative introductory speech and enriching our knowledge with all grace and persona of the audience. I extend my warmest thanks to Dr. Neha Tabassum, Young Research Scientist Fellow, for her valuable contribution to this webinar and for unveiling the latest novel therapeutic approaches and its aspects on breast cancer to all the participants. I express my special gratitude to Professor Dr. Azmat Unnisa Begum for actively organizing this webinar and giving the insight about Deccan Educational Trust and making it memorable to be eternal in lives. I would like to thank Mrs. Sharifa Habib and Mrs. Zainab Mehveen for introducing our guest speakers. I further thank Deccan International Webinar Team Coordinators, Mr. Sheikh Mohammad Nurullah, Mr. Mohammad Faridullah, Mr. Syed Ehtisham Moinuddin, Mrs. Novera Habib, Mr. Balaji Reddy, Mr. Amir Khan Yusuf Khan, Sayyida Zulekha Unnisa Begum, and Mr. Syed Tabrezullah Hussaini for their persistent and unwavering efforts to execute this event. Lastly, I express my heartfelt thanks to all the wonderful participants for their enthusiasm, which made this event a grand success. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Neha.
Thank you, sir.
So very shortly, I think in a day or two, we'll be in touch with you again.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Anytime.
The post feelings of this session.
Sure, sir. Would love to have an feedback about it as well. If someone has some questions, I'm more than happy to answer the questions.
Definitely. We will direct all those things.
Thank you, Azmat ma'am. Bye.
It's all my pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am. Right. Bye-bye. Right. Bye-bye.